So in this poll, Nigel Farage's approval rating was minus 32. That is by far the lowest that we have had it since the election.
So let's talk the latest numbers with you, Luke. Hi, good to have you here.
Great to be here.
Shall we start, as always, with the state of the parties?
Yes, and we've got used to, in these exchanges, talking about Reform UK being ahead, as they have been since May of last year. This week, that changes. So for the first time, we have Labour moving into the lead, the first time since March of last year that they've been in the lead. They're on 28%, followed by Reform UK on 24%, 4 points behind, and the Conservatives just behind them on 22%. So it is just one poll. You know, we'll need lots more to see if it's a trend, although others do seem to be confirming the pattern.
Yeah.
There very definitely does seem to have been an uplift in Labour's fortunes.
And what about the personal poll ratings of Andy Burnham? I mean, we could say that a certain bounce might have been expected, and it's not a surprise that there has been one. But this isn't just your average bounce, is it? He's soaring up the charts just at the moment.
No, absolutely. And, you know, we've talked before about whether political honeymoons are a thing of the past. It certainly seems like Andy Burnham is enjoying one. His approval rating in our latest polling is plus 19. Now, the highest that Keir Starmer ever got after his election win was plus 11. So he's already exceeded that by quite a margin. And it is clear, and it has continued to rise since he's been Prime Minister. So it is going up and up there. So, you know, I think Andy Burnham will be very pleased with that. He's certainly had a good first hearing from the public.
And Nigel Farage, Luke, he seems to be sinking as fast as Burnham is rising.
Well, and this is the other really striking thing. So in this poll, Nigel Farage's approval rating was minus 32. That is by far the lowest that we have had it since the election. You know, last summer he was close to break-even point. You know, he was the most approved of. He had the highest approval rating of any of the leaders. Now he actually has the lowest of the big five party leaders. You know, he's not consolidating the right. Kemi Badenoch is significantly higher. She's at break-even point. Polanski a little bit above him. Ed Davey a little bit further above him. So, you know, this is clearly a challenging time for Nigel Farage. And what's interesting is if you look at the raw numbers, it's the fact that both more people disapprove of him, but he's also dropped back on some of his positive approval. Some of the people who were previously fans of Nigel Farage now less likely to say he's doing a good job.
And what about Zach Polanski, the Green leader? He's certainly going through a rough patch, isn't he?
He is, and you know, remember Zach Polanski when he became leader, led that Green bounce in the polls. You know, he was cutting through, dominating the attention economy. Again, his approval now minus 24. Only 11% of the public say that he is doing a good job as Green leader, which does feel like quite a reversal of fortunes. And if you look at where the Green Party is taking votes from, you know, we know that in March, before the local elections, they were taking around 1 in 10, more than 1 in 10 Labour voters were going to the Greens. That has dropped to just 4% of Labour voters, people who voted Labour at the last election, now saying they'd vote Green. So Andy Burnham is bringing back those disillusioned progressives into the Labour fold, and that is hurting the Green Party.
Look, it's very, very early days in the Burnham premiership, and okay, so far so good, I guess you could say, and I guess he could feel, but the tough stuff is still lying ahead. Interesting that his approval rates are pretty good no matter which region of the country you look at.
Yeah, so there's been, you know, some question of, you know, is he really only popular in the Northwest? And unsurprisingly, that is where he is most popular. But what's interesting is across every region of England, his approval ratings have gone up. They've also gone up in Scotland and Wales as well. So it's not just an English thing. So in every region of England and in Scotland and Wales, he now has positive approval. As you say, this is very early days. Parliament isn't sitting. Opposition politicians aren't, scrutinising. He hasn't yet set out concrete proposals on the more divisive stuff. So, all of this might well change very quickly when Parliament comes back. But in terms of a first hearing from the electorate, he seems to have landed that well, and crucially has landed it across Britain.
Okay, now look, when your opening announcements of a premiership are to be giving away money, you can expect at least some sort of popularity in exchange, and the figures show that that's happening. There is, though, a certain amount of scepticism, Luke, about people's feelings about how it's going to be paid for. Tell us more.
Yes, so we asked about those early announcements on cutting VAT on energy bills, the bus cap fares, the business rates cut, and as you say, very popular. Well over 7 in 10 supporting the proposals. But when you ask people how clear Andy Burnham has been about how they'll be paid for, actually people are more likely, around half of the public say he hasn't been clear, just a third say that he has been clear on how they'll be paid for. That said, yes, when you ask the further question, do you think they're affordable? People are more likely to say they think they are affordable, 47%, than 21% who say they're not. So, people I think would like more clarity on precisely how he's going to pay for them, but they don't necessarily think that he can't do that.
Yeah, well, look, believing that policies are affordable without having a clue of how they're going to be afforded just says that everyone's got their own idea of who should pay for it. And usually it's generally not themselves.
No, and it's a sort of common theme in polling questions, which is the sort of median answer from the public is higher taxes, but not for me. For people like me, the sort of ill-defined, the rich should pay. But whenever anyone gets to the income bracket that you might count as rich, they say, oh, no, not me. I mean the people who are earning more. So very definitely when it comes to the how is he going to pay for some of his bigger proposals, some of the wider reforms, I think he is going to find it more difficult because this early stage, I think it's fair to say there have been plenty of winners and not that many losers. When it gets to a stage when there are winners and losers, landing that is going to be harder.
OK, let's talk about one of the big policy discussions of the week, which was on reform of social care. Give us a sense of how the British people think about social care.
Well, look, there's previous polling which shows that people don't tend to have a great understanding of how social care is funded at the moment. In fact, around a third of the public think that it's sort of like the NHS, free at the point of use. But when you ask them how should it be paid for, 7 in 10 Britons do think it should be paid for like that. It should be paid for out of general taxation, compared to just 21% who say that it should be paid for by the individuals who are receiving the care. So there's a preference to move to a flat model. Of course, then you get into what does that look like? One of the mooted proposals was this social care levy of 10% on estates. At first glance, and this is before the proposal has been debated, challenged, scrutinised, you get around 47% in favour, 21% against there. A bit of a left-right split as well.
And a split on, well, here's a particular question on the idea of replacing inheritance tax with a social care levy. Well, people are pretty evenly split.
Yeah, so, 47%, 21%, but Conservative and Reform voters more sceptical of that idea of replacing one with the other. But interestingly, again, it comes back to the who should pay more taxes. 3 in 5 do say that providing good quality social care should be a priority, even if that does mean higher taxes or spending cuts.
Right. Now, we're talking about a rebalancing from the privileged south and southeast towards the north. Interesting, though, different views among the people about what the north is, where the north begins.
Yes, the big question of where is the north. So we asked people to put on a map in a poll where they think the north begins. And interestingly, certainly further down than I would have put it, the average Briton says that the north of England begins just above Loughborough on the border with Nottinghamshire there. So that is where the average Brit puts it. Perhaps unsurprisingly, when you ask Scots where they think the north of England begins, they put it right up at the top of the northeast of England.
Yeah, where Loughborough is the deep, deep south.
Exactly.
Luke Tryl, great to talk to you. Thank you so much.